The recording is on.
Deeply unfortunate.
And let's take the prayer, please. And if you want to unmute yourself, that's okay. We'll unmute and recite the prayer together in the chaos of this technological world, but that's all good. So, together. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful, your presence, eternal one, your presence, strength for us, as you have been for our very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life? You have done right to us.
Therefore, we place our
ears before you. I say
go after all.
Let our faults and may it
prepare our hearts in love for you. Listen to these words of ours.
come
And we open our hearts to the mysteries of God. Study before your throne of glory, like sweet incense.
may you shine
the light of our soul source, and all the way we find ourselves.
may this part
May
in their merit,
our eyes be illumined
the saying of Israel.
open my eyes, may the word
and the word of my mouth and the thought of my heart
you, my rock, and my redeemer.
For it is eternal, it is from his mouth and you forth.
You do? You thought it was terrible. I don't think it's nice because I don't care about his fucking Why didn't you take your opportunity? Oh, I don't I don't know, but I'll tell you, she was. Fredo and Bupkis. Oh, Fredo and Bupkis. These horrible children of his.
I'm going to ask whoever has not muted themselves to please mute yourself. But you don't need to hear your conversations. Thank you.
Like you and your father.
Okay.
Bill, you have to take,
please.
Bill, you have to take the high road and not attack him.
Sorry, Mom. I don't agree.
You thought it was.
Okay, we're on page 263. And we've read the first paragraph. Rabbi Yehuda celebrates the nature of the conversation, the communion between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yitzchak, the man that he came to learn Torah with together. And we talked about the importance of actually putting that out in an explicit way to understand that there's a special reality that these two comrades, these two fellows, these two good friends, there's a special reality that they're seeking to enter and to understand that what they're trying to do is join through Torah to God. So he reframes that. He reminds everybody. It reminds everybody, meaning Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yitzchak, and we who are peeking in their conversation. It reminds us as well that this is what the hope is. This is what the goal is for this study. Okay, so this is the idea of creating true blessing, right? That those who rise up in the midnight not only arouse themselves, but they seek to arouse the union between the upper world and the lower world, and between the two lovers within God who are seeking to be together, and then to flow out the blessing from that into our world. So after he says that, Rabbi Yitzchak begins to speak again. As Rabbi Yehuda said, we're in the middle of talking about Yitzchak. So let's keep talking about Yitzchak with this kind of approach, this kind of kavanah, intention, as part of our focus. So it's the last 5 lines on 263. Rabbi Yitzchak opened. Again, I would love to have somebody read for us this evening. Somebody want to step up to do that?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Rabbi Yitzchak opens saying, Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah. 40 years old. Why does scripture specify that he was 40 years old when he married Rebekah? Because indeed, Isaac encompassed north and south, fire and water. So, Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, who resembled a rainbow, green, white, red. She was 3 years old when he embraced her, when he embraced Rebekah, and when he engendered at 60, generating fittingly, so that Jacob would issue perfectly from a 60-year-old. All of them were later linked with Jacob, and he became a consummate man.
Okay. So Rabbi Yitzchak takes some of the information that the hold on a second. Some of the information that the Torah gives us, which in general doesn't elicit much focus and attention, and he starts explaining that it doesn't really mean what it seems to be saying. Okay, so this is, as I said, they're now focusing on the story within Parashat Toldot itself, within the Torah reading of Toldot, and the second verse, the first verse is Ve'ela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham olidet Yitzchak. So we've discussed that. This is the lineage, this is the story, this is the generations, this is the offspring of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. Abraham engendered Yitzchak. So we talked about that back and forth between Isaac and Abraham, Abraham and Isaac. The very next verse is Vayi Yitzchak ben 40 shana b'kachto et Rivka bat Betuel ha'arami b'padan Aram achot Lavan ha'arami lod liisha. And Yitzchak was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Betuel the Aramean, from Padan Aram, the sister of Lavan the Aramean. This is all referring to Rivka's lineage, right? Lo liisha, as a wife. So there's a parallelism in Yitzchak is given the pedigree of being the son of Abraham. Rivka is being given also a pedigree, but it's a little bit more extensive. She is both the daughter of Betuel, the Aramean, and also we're told that she is the sister of Lavan, the Aramean. And then we're given another piece of information, which is that when Yitzchak married her, we should know how old he was. He was 40 years old. Okay, so that doesn't seem so significant, and that's what Rabbi Yitzchak says. What's the point? Why should the Torah go out of its way to tell us this very uninspiring piece of information? How old he was? So the answer is that it doesn't mean that that's how old he was. That's not what it means. What it means is what he encompassed, the qualities that he encompassed. The 40 years are actually 40 tens, right? 4 times 10, 4 tens, 4 times 10. 10 is just like it is an encompassing number for God's manifestation. It's an encompassing number for aspects of different aspects of reality. Each sphera, for instance, is often referred to as having 10 aspects within it. And here we have 4 times 10 that Isaac embodied 4 different important qualities. So he encompassed, as it says here, north and south, fire, and water. Okay, so he included within himself the directions of north and south, and also the qualities of fire and water. So each of these dyads, each of these couples, each of these 2 factors shares a common kind of distinction. Fire and water is the easier one for us to understand right off. You don't need any esoteric knowledge to understand. Fire is fire. Water is gentler. Water is cooler, and those qualities are actually applied as well to north and south. So that north. Well, let's take the note 48.
Isaac encompassed north and south, fire and water. Isaac incorporated his father's sphera, chesed, symbolized by south and water, and his own sphera, gevura, symbolized by north and fire. His age at the time of his marriage reflects all four symbols.
Right. So we've talked about it other times. If we look at the map of the sphirot, we look at the page of the sphirot. The sphirot are on the page. We look at them from top and then right to left to bottom. And the top is the east, and therefore the right side is the south, and the left side is the north. So when we think about the positive associations of the right side, that's the south. When we think about the negative associations of the left side, that's the north. And that comes the Zohar is often cites the prophetic statement, the verse. Meitzafon tipatach hara'ah. Evil comes out of the opening from the north. So the north has that scary quality, and there are gradations of northness, just as there are gradations of heat and coolness and of moisture and fire. But the south in general starts with chesed, love, and generosity, and therefore also water, the flowing nature of water, the spreading out nature of water. And then we have the north is gvura, din, judgment, harsher qualities, and the heat of fire. And if fire gets out of control, then fire also becomes dangerous when it starts spreading out. So these are synonymous kinds of qualities. You could actually reduce them into two, but the Zohar calls them four. And that means that each one of these can be conditioned by the other, right? There can be a more fiery north or a more watery north. There could be a more fiery south, a more watery south, a more southy water, a more northy water, etc. So if we start going into the permutations, you get more than four. But the point is that they influence each other and they modify each other. And we're going to get into that sense of modification, that sense of gradation or of mutual influence soon. But what we have here now is that he is, as it says a little later, he's consummate, he's complete. He starts with these four special qualities, and then he joins with Rivka, and Rivka helps him to then, with living together with him, finally succeed at the age of 60 in bearing fruit, having a child. And 60 is understood to be, he engendered at 60, generating fittingly. And as the notes point out, the idea of 60 is to take the 6 tens, right? Instead of 4 tens, it becomes 6 tens, and it's the 6 tens, the 6 tens of the 6 qualities of God as the male lover of Shekhinah, and then Shekhinah is the 7th, and that's where Rebecca comes in. So the union of Yitzchak and Rebecca is fully embodying the union of God with God's own self by the time Yitzchak and Rebecca have a child. But it takes apparently, the implication here is it took time. Yitzchak is special. Yitzchak is, Abraham's son, and Yitzchak embodies these exemplary qualities together. Nevertheless, it takes him 20 years after he marries Rebecca before he becomes a consummate human being. When we go back to Rebecca, Rebecca's age is not mentioned in the Torah. It doesn't say anywhere that Rebecca was 3 years old when Isaac married her. But this is a rabbinic calculation based on reading the Torah with a certain assumption, which is that all the stories that we've had in the Genesis, in this immediate sequence that we just read, happen one after the other without any time breaks. So the sequence is the Akedah. The sequence is that Isaac is bound by Abraham up on Mount Moriah. When Abraham comes down from Mount Moriah, he hears that Rivka was born. So the assumption is that she is born at the moment that the Akedah has just been completed. 1 second here. And so that's that assumption. The next story is that Sarah dies. So, and that we know she is 127 years old when she dies. And we also know that she was 90 years old when she gave birth to Isaac. So that means that we definitely know that Isaac was 37 when Sarah died. If we apply the assumptions that are not necessary, they're just easy assumptions. They're okay, but they're not necessary. If we apply the assumptions that the Midrash works with, that Sarah dies immediately at the as a result of the Akedah, if we put them together and there's no time gap, there's no years that intervene between those two events, then that puts the age of Isaac at the Akedah at 37, as opposed to being a 10-year-old boy or something like that, which we often picture him to be, a kind of an innocent child. He's actually a middle-aged or a late, a late young man. He's 37 years old, pretty mature, and that's part of then the story about him going along with it. He knows what he's doing. We'll get to that very soon with regard to Rebecca. So if we make that assumption that he's 37 at the Akedah, now he's 40 when he marries Rebecca. 3 years have ensued. And when was Rebecca born? We made the assumption that the news that Rebecca was born was given to Abraham at the end of the Akedah, and assuming that that is actually when she was born, not that he heard news about what happened before. So if you make that assumption, she was born at the Akedah, and now we're 3 years later. So when Yitzchak marries Rebecca, turns out that she's only 3 years old. So it's not the marriage of equals, of two people that fall in love with each other, more or less of the same age, or certainly that two mature human beings fall in love with each other. No, according to the way the Midrash works out these numbers, it turns out that basically we have a pedophile on our hands. And this is not a problem for the Torah. It's not a problem for the rabbis, unfortunately. It's a kind of an uncomfortable fact that this is not the biggest deal for the rabbis. If you look at note 50, we get this.
She was 3 years old when he embraced her, the youngest legal age a female can be married.
Right. So God forbid, no, we don't allow a 2.5-year-old to be married, but a 3-year-old can be married. And at that point, she's being married off by her parents, by her father, to be more specific. Parents could marry their child off at a very young age. And also, as far as the rabbis are concerned, that's the age at which point sexual intercourse counts as sexual intercourse. So there's actually a pretty even more disturbing point, which is that if you have intercourse with a 2.5-year-old, it's not considered intercourse. And the child is still considered a virgin. which is pretty astounding, and again, not exactly a comfortable situation to think about. So, so the Midrash making those assumptions actually gets itself into some very sticky, uncomfortable chronology, which the Zohar, in a certain sense, mitigates, right? Because the Zohar says, don't take these ages literally. Take the ages as symbolizing something else. So when Isaac is 40, it doesn't mean that he was 40. We have no idea how old he was. We're talking about 4 special qualities that he had mastered. When we say that Rebecca was 3, it doesn't mean that she was 3. Maybe she was 28. We don't know how old she was. What we're talking about when we talk about the years of her life are the special qualities that she embodied. And what are those 3 special qualities that she embodied? She was like a rainbow. She encompassed the 3 basic colors. So, of course, this takes us into color theory, and what the Zohar associates with the different colors. So let's look at note 49.
Who resembled a rainbow, green, white, red. Rebecca symbolizes Shechina, who displays the colors of the spherotic triad, Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, white, red, and green.
Okay, and then you have all these different references about how to work out the colors. So white is understood to be the color of purity, of goodness, and you know, an association that many cultures make. We make that association as well. So white is chesed, white is love, right? Red is also associated with fire, with blood, with violence. So that's the association with gvura, with the left-hand side, with judgment, with all the tough stuff that the left side can dish out. And then green is considered the mixture of white and red. Don't try this at home if you're a painter. It doesn't work. Take it from me. So green is understood here as a harmonious color that combines both the right side and the left side, both the side of Chesed and the side of Gvura. That's Tiferet. Now, whether green really means green is also something that needs to be looked at in various places in the Zohar and in the rest of the literature. And green in general, we're going to have it in a minute. Green is associated with a kind of it's associated in contrast with Chesed when we have a discussion about Esther. When the tractate Megillah has all these midrashim about the story of Purim, so it talks about Esther. The Megillah says that everybody was enamored by her grace and charm, and the king Achashverosh is bowled over by her. She defeats all of the competitors for the crown as queen. And the Talmud says, well, actually, it was a miracle. They say, "Your Esther Yirak Roket Haita, Ela Chut Shel Chesed Mashuch Aleha." We're going to get to that phrase again soon. So Esther was actually greenish. Yirak Roket, from the word Yarok. That's what we have here too. She was greenish. She actually was not so conventionally beautiful, but she had a thread of grace drawn upon her. There was some mysterious quality that made people just fall for her, without any choice. She just had this captivating quality to her. So there, Yirak Roket sounds like not very physically attractive. Nevertheless, it's something that moves along with some charm and some other kind of beauty, some inner beauty, or some kind of character trait or temperament. Here, the color green is understood to be not fully chesed, not white, but also not red, but harmoniously bringing them together. In other places, it seems that green might really be yellow and not green as we understand it, but it could also simply be the green of nature, the green of life, the green of verdant vegetation. Another thing, of course, is that the rainbow is not adequately analyzed as being, a color spectrum of white, red, and green. If anything, the prism takes away the white, right? The whole point of a rainbow is that it's not white light, but that it's actually refracted light, and that it has green in it, and it has red in it, but it has blue, and it has yellow, and all this other kind of stuff. Roy G. Biv. So the color, both theoretically and also just descriptively, is a little weird. Just as an aside, if you look at paintings of rainbows from the old days, they almost none of them actually accurately depict the prism, the color prism of the rainbow, the color spectrum of the rainbow. I don't have it with me right now, but go check out, for instance, Rubens, who knew color. He knew color like crazy, and he made some gorgeous, wonderful landscape paintings. He makes a painting of a rainbow, and the rainbow is pretty much white, red, and green. It's not the rainbow colors that we automatically associate and actually really see, which just seems to mean that sometimes people's theories and assumptions color how they look at things. Shocking, I know, in today's world, where everybody basically sees things so clearly. No, we have to remember that sometimes people actually don't see what they see. They see what they want to see and what they think they see. That's a side point. The point here is that the 3 years old is now used as a symbol, and she's not really 3, but she embodies this harmonious balance of left, right, and center. So the two of them, each in their own way, bring this harmonious mix together. Is it a coincidence that he's got 4 10s and she's got 3 singles, but so he's a little more elaborate than she is, but in the end they end up making 7, and of course she is Shekhinah. She is the one that makes the 7 along with the 60 later, right? So the combination of the two of them together brings about this wonderful flourishing and consummation within Yitzchak. Yitzchak is, of course, the main focus for the Zohar. Rivka is and also ran. I mean, she gets her due, and we're going to see that soon. But nevertheless, Yitzchak is the main guy. So, but he couldn't do it without Rivka, right? Without Rivka, he wouldn't have been able to be fully fulfilled. Okay. Now that phrase that we get told that she was the daughter of Besuel. Daughter of Betuel.
Daughter of Betuel, the Aramean, from Padan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean. Who cares about all this? It has already been stated, Betuel fathered Rebekah. Now, daughter of Betuel, the Aramean, then from Padan Aram, then sister of Laban, the Aramean. But they have established
Wait, and give a little expression to that question mark, right? Give a little like raise an eyebrow, give a shrug, make a little hand motion, roll your eyes a little bit, because it's actually what can I say? It's a little funny the way that the Zohar brings up the question, right? When the first question is 40 years old, why does Scripture specify that he was 40 years old? Right? That's what we had the question for Yitzchak. It's superfluous, it's uninteresting, but it doesn't have that edge that we have here, right? Who cares? My ichpatlan. The Zohar actually literally says, who the heck cares? So it's a very shocking liberty that the Zohar allows itself to be so crassly dismissive of what the Torah is saying, and of course, it's not simply out of just ignorance. I know these things already. We read in the previous Torah portion, right when Abraham comes down from Mount Moriah after the Akedah. We hear we hear about the birth of Rebecca, and we are told that she's the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean, right? And then on top of that, you have to pile on that we also have to know whose sister she is. Who cares? What is this all about? So it's quite edgy for the Zohar to ask the question in this way, but it answers it.
But they have established that although she was among the wicked, she did not act like them. For she was daughter of Bethuel from Padan Aram and sister of Lavan, all of whom were perniciously evil. Yet she ascended by worthy deeds and did not imitate them.
Right. So the Zohar says this really meaningless extra information is actually quite significant. Even though we knew it already, what the Torah is trying to do is talk in awe of this person. This person, Rebecca, do you know who she's coming from? Can you understand who she's related to, how she was raised? This amazing, special person. She came out of two of the lowest scum of the earth that there are. Her father and her brother, disgusting human beings, and then she's Rebecca. Okay, we'll get through a little bit more of this, and then we'll come back to what this all seems to mean, or what the Zohar takes from this. Let's see. Let's go on.
Now one should contemplate, if Rebecca had been 20 years old or more, or even 13, then it would have been commendable if she had not acted like them. But since she was only 3, what is so great about it?
Okay, so now the Zohar reasserts the simple literal understanding of the Midrash. No, let's actually take it at face value. She really was 3. Forget about the symbolism that we gave before. Now, it's not that the symbolism is wrong. She is an exemplary, unbelievable, special human being, but she's also only 3. She's also only 3. So this is the Zohar, as we've seen so many times. What we have to do also when we keep up with the Zohar, we have to dance on both of these realms, in both of these planes, on the prosaically literal, and then the profoundly mysterious and the profoundly spiritual. They're all tied together. So now the Zohar asks a simple question. If she was generous, after all, that's what happened, right? Why was she chosen to be Isaac's wife? Because of that classic gesture that she made at the well, right? Eliezer, or whoever the servant was of Abraham, says, let's make a test. Let's find out if I can find somebody who's super generous, super magnanimous among all of these women. That's the one who will be Isaac's wife. And then she comes in And that's what she does. She says, I'll give you water, I'll give the camels water. She's really, really wonderfully generous. So that proves that she's the perfect match for Isaac, right? That's the general Bible story. Now the Zohar says, what do you want? 3 years old people, 3-year-old kids, they don't know what they're doing. They'll give you, they'll share you their candy with you. They'll let you hug their little doll. They'll tell you, all the family secrets. They have no filter. They don't know what they're doing. So why is this considered so wonderful that she did this? It doesn't betray an act of choice. It doesn't betray an act of real intent. It doesn't give us grounds to praise her. She's just a little kid doing whatever she does. There's the Zohar is convinced, also based on other midrashim, that a human being becoming bar or bat mitzvah, that's part of what it is. It's not like all of a sudden now we begin to start holding you accountable. You have changed, and you are, when you become 13 or 12 for a girl, that's when you actually have the Yetzer HaTov coming in. Before that, you're just an animal. You're just a creature who acts instinctually. And if you do something good, it's by accident. If you do something bad, it's by accident. It's only once you become, a young adult that you actually are capable of making moral choices. So she's 3 years old. So why is she getting credit for making a beautiful moral gesture? It has nothing to do with tiny children. So Rabbi Yehuda replied.
Rabbi Yehuda replied, she was 3 years old, yet she performed all that service for the servant.
Okay, what kind of answer is that?
It's a good answer.
What makes it so good?
She really, it wasn't just to say, yeah, would you like some of my candy? She actually went and did an adult's work. She fetched the water for the servant and for his camels. I mean, if there ever was intent, there it is.
Right. So it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't something that she did for a second or even for a minute. The effort that she had to put into it is totally counter to a child's spontaneous offer to be nice. This required real blood, sweat, and tears. She had to actually do a tremendous amount of work, and a kid would get tired out or bored or distracted long before they succeeded in doing this. So she's old beyond her years, right? This shows that there's something else going on here. It's not simply that she's a little one. Go ahead. Rabbi Yitzchak.
Rabbi Yitzchak said, even though she did all that, we do not know if her actions were worthy or not. But
look at the note for a second.
Note 55. We do not know if her actions were worthy or not. Perhaps 3-year-old Rebecca was simply imitating the actions of others.
So what do you make of that?
Well, they're taking away her intent, but also it kind of goes against what we just read, the fact she came from such miserable stock.
Right, excellent.
How could she possibly imitate do such a wonderful thing? Where would she have learned it?
Right. So there's a certain kind of inconsistency here, right? They first posit that her environment, she's being raised in a completely immoral, evil environment, and what a mystery that she was able to be different from that. And now we're also saying, wait a second, maybe she's just doing dumb imitation. Maybe she just is engaging in something that she learned. It's learned behavior, and it really doesn't qualify as her own decision. So, clearly there's a little bit of tension there, but it doesn't mean when we say that she is the victim of her environment, we're not accusing Betuel or Lavan of being lazy. We're not accusing the whole environment over there, the whole town and culture of all the shepherds and so on, of being people who don't work hard. She sees hard work all around her. She sees people knocking themselves out for whatever task it is that they assume, and she's a good girl. But that's part of the problem, right? She's a good girl, and she learns that when you do something, you got to do it all the way to the end. The problem is that she's really learning that when you mess with somebody, you should mess with them to the end also. That you should work very hard, as Lavan did, to be absolutely unfair and manipulative. So the fact that she chose to give this guy water, okay, but that could be an accident. Her persistence, nevertheless, she persisted. Doesn't necessarily qualify as a moral victory. Maybe she just learned that when you do something, you finish the job. When Betuel would tell her to go wash the floor, if she didn't wash the floor completely, she got it. She learned very, very early on, I got to do this all the way. So maybe it's not such a proof. But come and see.
But come and see what is written. Like a rose among thorns, so is my beloved among the maidens. Like a rose, assembly of Israel, who lies among her hosts, like a rose among thorns.
Okay. So the proof ends up being, according to the Zohar, not from empirical reality, but from a verse. We should have guessed, right? You can't necessarily prove anything from what happens in the world, but the verses tell you what's true. The verses tell you that the rose exists among thorns, and Rivka is the rose. How did we prove that? We didn't. We know it. We know that Rivka is the rose. We know that Rivka is Shekhinah, who's coupling with Yitzchak, because that's what has to be. And the idea that she is surrounded by thorns is what the verse informs us, right? The thorns are the bad guys and the troubles, and the Shekhinah lies among her hosts like a rose among the thorns. Okay. You have a nice long note here. And he goes into a little bit of, I guess, botany. 57.
Like a rose.
Oh, wait. No. First the rose. That's the botany part.
Okay.
56.
Rose, Shoshana, probably means lily or lotus in Song of Songs, but here Rabbi Yitzchak has in mind a rose, as it's clear from the word varda, rose, at the end of the paragraph, etc., etc.
etc. So that's just, first of all, just a little interesting thing. The next time we have you go to a cocktail party, may it be safe and soon. You can point out, hey, probably you think that Shoshana means rose, but guess what? It really doesn't mean a rose. It really means a lily, or maybe it means a lotus. It's a mistake to think that it means a rose. Well, the Zohar makes that mistake. The Zohar assigns that common understanding to the word Shoshana, Shoshana bein HaCholchim, in the Song of Songs, and it labels it in Aramaic a rose. Okay, go ahead. Now, 57.
Like a rose, assembly of Israel. In the Midrash, Rabbi Yitzchak applies this same verse to Rebekah. It is also applied to Israel among the nations. Here, the Zohar's Rabbi Yitzchak applies it to Shechina, assembly of Israel, who lies among the harsh forces of judgment like a rose among thorns. In Rabbinic Hebrew, the phrase Knesset Yisrael, assembly of Israel, denotes the people of Israel. The Midrash on the Song of Songs describes the love affair between the maiden, the earthly community of Israel, and her lover, the Holy One, blessed be he. In the Zohar, Knesset Yisrael can refer to the earthly community, but also, often primarily, to Shechina, the divine feminine counterpart of the people, the aspect of God most intimately connected with them. The lovers in the Song of Songs are pictured as the divine couple, Tiferet and Shechina.
Right. So he says often and often primarily. I would say, and often simultaneously. Right. This is part of this idea that we're not talking about either or, but the dimensions that of reality that the Zohar examines are dimensions that interface with each other and that interlace with each other, so that we, Knesset Yisrael, the Assembly of Israel, we are Shechina, right? We are the embodiment and the actions of Shechina as it unfolds in this world. And of course, it starts with the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Knesset Yisrael is the Assembly of Israel that has been created, and that's the story that's unfolding here in the Zohar, by Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah. So this is how the emanation actually works itself out. It's all a divine emanation as it finds its way into the real physical world. So, okay, now that we have proven that by decree, by fiat, that Rebekah is Shechina, Shechina is a rose among the thorns. So Rebekah was a rose among the thorns of her own family, and she is then the one who unites with Isaac to bring about the next step in our emanation. Mystery of the word.
Mystery of the word. Isaac issues from the side of Abraham, supernal chesed, who acts in love toward all creatures, though he is severe judgment. Rebekah issues from the side of severe judgment, but she withdrew from among them and joined Isaac. For although she issues from the side of severe judgment, she is mild judgment, a thread of grace dangling from her. Isaac, severe judgment. She, mild, like a rose among thorns. If she had not been mild, the world could not have endured the severe judgment of Isaac.
And just a couple more lines. Next page.
Similarly, the Blessed Holy One matches couples in the world, one stern, one tender, so that all will be arranged harmoniously, so that the world will be firm and sweet.
Okay. So before we get to the punchline, we have the Zohar now bringing out this this mystery, right? Mystery of the word. And the word here might be fittingly capitalized, right? The translation could also be, this is the mystery of the thing, the mystery of the matter. But it also means the word, because the word is what's emanating here. The word is what is unfolding. How can it be? Right? Let's contemplate, says the Zohar. How can it be that out of Abraham comes Isaac? It's a contradiction. How can chesed, pure chesed, engender pure judgment? This is the mystery. Right? So Abraham's supernal chesed acts in love toward all creatures. Nevertheless, issuing from his side is Isaac, who is severe judgment. And here the Zohar goes one step further than it often does. This is dina takifa, din kasheh. This is hard judgment. Isaac represents pure judgment just as much as Abraham represents and lives out pure, undifferentiating love, unjudgmental love, right? He is loving to all creatures. Isaac, the opposite. So the Zohar asks, how could that possibly be? And yet of course it is. And then correspondingly, they say Rebecca comes from the side of severe judgment because Betuel and Lavan come from the side of evil, which is the roommate or at least the neighbor of the left-hand side of severe judgment. And yet she withdrew from among them and joined Isaac. Right? They don't quite talk about engendering. They don't quite talk about issuing, right? They talk about withdrawing. She makes a conscious choice. There seems to be a little bit of a difference here between the way Isaac develops and the way Rebecca develops. Even though Isaac is celebrated, we've had it already over the last bunch of pages, with in undergoing a process of development, of growth, of spiritual attainment and spiritual fulfillment, we don't have the same kind of celebration of some kind of struggle. When he is bound on the altar on Mount Moriah, we don't quite have that. We have a little bit of it, but we don't have it really as being an essential part of his being, that he's working at this, right? Because he's judgment, in a certain sense, he's passive. He accepts what happens to him as judgment, right? He is, full of fear and acceptance. Rebecca has to fight. She has to fight to extricate herself from Betuel and Lavan's influence. She is a good student. She watches what everybody's doing. She incorporates it. She learns from it. And then somehow, at this early age, she figures out what's right and what's wrong. And she knows to reject that which she's been taught to accept. So she distances herself away from that. How did she do that? Where does that come from? So we have two mysteries. One mystery is about the emanative process itself, which should be an automatic flow of like to like. And yet, nevertheless, we have a flow from like to unlike, from chesed to its opposite. How does that work out? How does that kind of opposition come to be created? And the other mystery is the mystery of free will. The other mystery is, how do you get past the forces that are making you who you are and are trying to make you who you should be? How does Rivka actually extricate herself on her own steam from her environment, from her influences? That, I think, also helps to understand the other part of what the Zohar brings up, which is that her extrication is not completely contrary to her origin. How does the Zohar describe her? She issues from the side of severe judgment, but she doesn't go all the way to chesed, does she? She becomes mild judgment, a thread of grace dangling from her. That's that chutz shel chesed that the Zohar borrows from the discussion about Esther. Right, that thread of grace. That's chesed. It's a little bit of chesed, It's enough to change things, but not to transform. She's not transformed into chesed. Chesed engenders din, but Rebecca, who comes out of din, doesn't go back to being chesed. She becomes midat hadin harafa, right? The weaker, the softer kind of judgment. That's also so how does that happen? Why is that the case? I think partly because of this difference between how the change happens. She needs that force of gvura to actually extricate herself from gvura. She needs to be strong and really stubborn and really persistent in the same way that she's drawing that water for the servant. She needs to be dedicated and fight against the fatigue and fight against the temptations to stop and fight against the temptations to go with whatever everybody else is doing. Everybody else is ignoring that servant. She, in order to do good, she actually has to have a real cussed streak of independence in her. And that's gvura. That comes from the judgment side. So in order to extricate herself from judgment, she has to actually embody that quality to a great degree. But it's not severe judgment. Severe judgment is punitive, retributive, cruel, harsh. At least it lends itself to that side. That's the thorns part. That's Betuel, and that's Lavan, who use the quality of judgment for evil. She is going to become a softer kind of judgment. She's going to become judicious. She's going to actually take plenty of initiative. She's going to have to fight against her own husband's wishes when her own husband tries to, decide what the future will be. She needs to be a very tough cookie. But she's a tough cookie for the sake of the good. And not everybody can be that way. And not everybody respects that. Not everybody can appreciate that. So she is a rose among the thorns. She's not a rose who rises above the thorns. She's a rose in the thorns. Nevertheless, says the Zohar, had she not been mild, the world could not have endured the severe judgment of Isaac.
Rabbi?
So, yes, who's that?
Yes, me.
Mark.
All right, let me turn on my microphone.
Sure, what the microphone you did. Now I can see you.
Okay.
Chiaroscuro is great. You look like a Rembrandt.
I'm trying to remember when we did the Akedah, the Akedah. You said that there was a response of loving to Isaac in accepting Abraham's judgment. So if I remember correctly, and I may not be remembering correctly, but if I'm remembering correctly, doesn't that modify your picture of Isaac? Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And it modifies it necessarily because that's going to be the mystery that we're going to come to next. How does Jacob come out of this? Right? And eventually we'll come back to all the other things that you brought up over the past couple of weeks that are problematic and that will remain problematic. No promises here that I'm going to smooth everything out. For sure, at any point in our studying here of what the Zohar is saying, we're grasping one piece of a much bigger mystery. The easy image that that comes to mind right now is the famous image of the blind people all getting a hold of an elephant, right? And this one holds on to the trunk of the elephant. Oh, an elephant is like a snake. And then this one holds on to the foot of the elephant. Oh, an elephant is like a tree trunk. And this one holds on to the tusk of an elephant, and oh, the elephant is like a a bone or a rock or something like that. And they're all right. They're all right because each one is encountering that piece. So we struggle to keep on harmonizing the pieces and keeping on putting the pieces back in, into a jigsaw puzzle so that it creates some bigger picture. But you're right. When the Zohar talks about the Akedah, the Zohar goes into, and we had it not too long ago, this celebration of fire and water and fire. And that's why the Zohar says back here on the previous page, Isaac is 40 years old. He has north and south. He has fire and water. So in and of itself, that does already, and that comes from the Akedah experience, that where the Zohar sees the Akedah as being this mixing together of Abraham becoming harsh and Isaac becoming loving. It's a moment, it's a transformative moment, but it doesn't apparently erase the binaries that the Zohar needs to keep on using. And that's also part of the acknowledgement of this mystery. Part of the acknowledgement of this mystery is that even though heuristically we're dividing up these things into black and white, it's a mystery how this whole thing coexists with itself. And that's in the end, the last line that the Zohar says here, if it were only black and white, then actually it would just be black. Right? If it were really so hard and fast in its distinctions, then guess what? Then Chesed would have not a chance. There would never be the possibility of the survival of this world if there wasn't some kind of softening and sweetening. That's that last word that is used there, and that word is a really special word in the whole tradition of the Zohar and down into Chassidut, down into the Hasidic tradition, to sweeten the harshness. If it weren't for that quality of sweetness that somehow insinuates itself, despite the overpowering qualities of severe judgment, and severe judgment, again, it's a very loaded term to apply to Isaac. Severe judgment is being applied to the demons and to Isaac. How does Esau come out of Isaac? Right, that's part of our mystery that we already touched on before. Isaac is very, 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 what can I say? Vulnerable to extreme extreme judgment, extreme punishment, extreme terror, and the Akedah is this kind of moment of canceling that or of mitigating that, but that's his nature. That's who he is, and that's an overpowering aspect of the world. I was looking at our Sedra. We're going to be reading Parshat Bamidbar, and that's our schedule for Shabbos to be reading that Torah portion. And the word hafked is used to appoint the Levites. Hafkedet Halavim. So the Baal HaTurim says that the word hafked is used only twice in all of Tanakh. The word hafked. And of course, the Levites are, for the Zohar, the left-hand side. Right? The priests are on the right-hand side. They're chesed. Aaron is chesed. And the Levites are on the left-hand side. So the Balaturim says the word hafked is used here, appoint the Levites to be Levites. This is where they are, officially designated to be the special servants of God. And he says, and the other place that the word hafked is in Tehillim, where it says hafkedet harishayim, that the evil people have power over the world. And he says that's the same thing. He says having power is evil. Now it may be that you have to use it, and that you should try to use it for good, but there's always a kernel, there's always a touch of oppression, of subjection, of taking chesed and not letting it flow, and that in and of itself is pachad Yitzchak. It's scary. It's a scary thing. So the way that the Zohar wants to essentialize gets it in trouble because of the complexities of the world, but it also highlights aspects of the complexities of the world, because the Zohar doesn't stop. It doesn't just draw the diagram and say, here it is, this is the complete picture of reality. It keeps on modifying it, it keeps on mixing it together some more. And that's what it's saying here as well. Guess what? Yitzchak actually comes out of Avraham. Right? The chesed that is the creation of the world produces an Isaac who would destroy the world if not for the fact that there's also a Rivka who chooses to flee and extricate herself from the Isaac side in order to save the world. Right? There's this very dramatic back and forth. Right? And then the Zohar finally says at the end, and this is happening all the time. All the time. Similarly, the Blessed Holy One matches couples in the world. Meshadech shiduchim, mezabek zivugim. Right? And the complementaries that get mixed together, one is stern and one is tender, so that all will be arranged harmoniously. Somehow or other, the contrasts complement each other. The contraries somehow harmonize. Yeah.
So, Rabbi, so Isaac marries his mother, and Rivka marries her father.
In a sense, which is the way it always is anyway, right?
Well, that's 3 years old.
Yeah, but we know that none of us have matured past 3 years old at all. Wait, David, I didn't see what you wrote. Hold on a second. Let me see where did the chat go? Where did the chat go? Where did your comment go? Oh, here it is. What of the first verse of this week's Haftorah? Okay, what's the first verse of this week's Haftorah? What's the first verse?
I'm having some.
What is the first verse?
I'm having some question about Hafked. I mean, is it literally Hafked? I mean, the first verse says Machoka v'nifkadeta ki yipaked. Is it the same root?
No. Yes, it's the same root, which it means itself and it's backwards. That in Machar Chodesh, right? So there, Yonatan says to David, "You're going to be missing, and people are going to take note of the fact that you're missing." So the word Hafked means many things. In our Torah reading, not the Haftarah, in our Torah reading where it starts from, the word Pikudim means the people who are counted, the people who are counted in the census. But it also has that association of to take note of, to be, and then we have it all the way back with Sarah. Hashem pakadet Sarah. God took note of Sarah and gives her a child, just as He had promised. Kasher Amar, just as God said, He said He was have a promise, and now God says, "Oh, I have to remember to do that." So the word pakod has many, many, many associations and meanings, and the Baal HaTurim is not trying to exhaust all those meanings. He's trying to make a simple point of that power corrupts, right? That power is in and of itself a corrupting agent, and you have to be careful about it. All right, we're going to stop here. Next week is Shavuos, so we're not going to be meeting to learn Zohar. For your information, it came out in Shomrei week, 6:30 to 7:30. We have usually Torah study, and it's usually the Parsha. Next week, it'll be right before Yom Tov starts. We're going to learn a little bit of the book of Ruth. And then at 7:30, we're going to go straight from that same session. It's not going to be a separate session, same link. We're going into Ma'ariv to greet Yom Tov. It'll be very short. Ma'ariv for Yom Tov is very short. So we're going to do that from 7:30 till basically about 7:45. And around 8 o'clock or so, that's when Yom Tov starts. And you've got all the information and whatever about the different study sessions for Tikkun Leil Shavuot. You'll also have links to materials that you can access if you want to just do your own self-study by studying texts on your own, or you can listen to teachers. There's the conservative movement nationwide Tikkun. There's our community Tikkun in Montclair that's happening that night. So all of that stuff is a plethora of wonderful stuff, and enjoy. Okay, so if I don't get a chance to wish it to you again, have a good Shabbos and then a good Yom Tov. Take care, everybody.
Sure.
You too.
Thank you.